Hi, we're back. Time to talk about contracts now that we've gone through the process. So if you recall, you make an offer, you negotiate until you get an accepted offer, then you do your due diligence, and it's only at the time that you remove your subjects and say, yes, I want to buy this property, is the property actually contractually sold. That is when you're buying. That's also when you give your deposit. Then some time passes and it's either 30, 60, 90, whatever days it is from now is your completion date, which is where you pay for the property. And then the possession date is the date that you actually get access to the property. And the time is noted in the contract. So let's finally look at this contract and what it looks like. Okay, let's share the screen. All right. So here is what the contract looks like. I'm going to send it to you. In fact, it's attached to this email. So read this whole thing. It's not that exciting at all whatsoever, but it's our standard form contract. It has all the details within it. And then we usually fill out certain portions of it when we make offers. So it is important for you to know what's in this contract. I'm not going to go through this whole thing right now because there's so much to talk about. I want to go through the key points and try to keep on point for you. So the big thing, if you're buying, these are the costs that are associated with the purchase. We're probably going to be talking about this if we haven't already, and you'll have a net sheet that you can look at with your potential costs involved depending on the type of property. New properties have different costs than existing or resale properties, and of course price points, first time home buyer stuff. Those are all factors that are nuances and specific to you, so we're going to talk about those too. For the purposes of the contract, here are the things that are added to the price of the purchase, and you pay that on the completion date, except for your deposit you pay ahead of time. Okay, so here's the contract of purchase and sale. This is what it looks like. You've got the date at the top. You're going to have the MLS number, the R number, as we're going to talk about it here, your name, the seller's name, the location of the property is here. The legal description, what you're actually buying, is here. This is the actual legal description on the title of the property, like the deed. It's what you're buying. Then we've got the purchase price. This is the number one thing that we need to determine in order to make an offer. We're going to work together on that. We're going to go through comparables. We're going to come up with a price based on budget and the comparables, market conditions, and what's going on. The next thing we need to put into the contract is a deposit. It's typically around 5% of the purchase price. That can fluctuate depending on everyone's situation, motivation, if you want to make a stronger offer, or depending on your financial resources at the time. For now, most of the time, rule of thumb is 5%. Typically, the deposit is provided as a bank draft or a wire, depending on what's going on in the world and how you can get your money. Keep in mind, it can take some time to get your money. So if you need to sell some securities, you have money in your RSP, a GIC, anything that is not cash in your bank, even if it's cash inside an account, it can take time, 3 business days to clear and for the money to arrive into your account. And if you're wiring money, it can take additional time in order for the deposit to be received. The deposit is typically due upon subject removal or within 24 hours of subject removal, so that you have time to deal with it if you're dealing with it physically on that day. And it's not something that you really want to leave to the last minute, to be honest. By the time you're making an offer on a property, you're going to have a lot of work to do, reading documents, home inspections, figuring out a price, all that kind of stuff. I honestly encourage my clients, get your deposit together, get it ready, and have it sitting in account during the time of your home buying process, or the second that you think that we're getting close to the right one, get it ready, or better yet, get the bank draft and have it ready, because you can always put it back in, but it's just one less thing that you need to deal with on the day of when so many things are going on for you. Okay, now the deposit is also made out in trust to your buyer's brokerage. So to your brokerage, which would be my brokerage, Sotheby's International Realty Canada in trust. And it will be written in here, and that's actually what goes on the bank draft. It will be a bank draft. not a certified check or cash, or the wire, and we'll be initialing here. So price and deposit are the big ones for this. The next is the terms and conditions, and we're going to get into more details about that. Typically, there are a standard set of conditions that we normally look at, but it all depends on your situation. So we'll actually talk about those in person, but things might be in there like financing, home inspection, that sort of thing. And yeah, we'll address those to your specific situation. That's what goes in there. Now, subjects aren't only the items that go into a contract. Terms can be in there too. And again, specific to the negotiation, your situation, the seller's situation, there are certain terms that we might want to put in there to make sure we protect you and or facilitate a transaction to make it as smooth as possible. Completion. The completion date is the day that you pay. That's the day that if you're using mortgage funds, that you're going to get those, and you're going to get all the rest of your cash, your down payment, that are going to be applied to purchasing the property. So you might remove your subjects today, but you might not complete until 3 months from now. The possession date is the day that you get access to the property and at what time. And that can mean just the keys being physically available for myself or for you to pick up from the listing agent's office, to meeting at the property, keys in hand, so your movers can get in and be ready to go. So when you're trying to schedule things for your possession day, I typically suggest allowing an hour between the time of arranging the keys to actually trying to book having movers or somebody arrive. We'll know more about the possession, what's going to happen at possession, a day or two closer to the actual time. It just, everybody has things going on and we make all kinds of arrangements. And so we will be in communication about that. Adjustments. Adjustment date is usually the same day as possession, and it is the day that all of the expenses relating to the property are adjusted. So for example, things like the property taxes, strata fees, that sort of thing. You know, if you pay your property taxes on July 2nd or 4th or whatever it is every year, and you pay for the whole year in advance, let's say the property taxes are $2,000, well, the seller pays them on that day, let's call it July 1st for ease of conversation, and you purchase in September, well, the seller has now prepaid 12 months, but they're only living there for July, August, and then September. They're only going to be there for all of July, all of August. So they really only need to pay for 2 months of the 12 months that they've already prepaid. So they will need to be reimbursed those other 10 months that they've already paid. And that's one of the costs that's added on the statements of adjustment at closing. That's why it's not just your down payment. There's other smaller costs involved. The strata fee, if you complete or purchase the property on the 15th of the month, well, they've paid the strata fee from the 1st for the entire month. So that means they need to be refunded for the last, however many days of that month. It's always prorated by day. So those are some of the smaller additional costs. And this is the day that happens, the adjustment date, sorry. Because sometimes the possession day isn't the day after completion. Sometimes it's 1, 2, 3 days after completion. There's a gap because of the seller needing to sell, move out, and have time to get into purchase the new property, move into the new property, get out of the property for you so that you can move in. So sometimes there's a few day gap in there. So don't be surprised if that happens. The next section is the included items. So everything that goes in here is anything that is not a fixture or comes secured with the home. A wall-mounted TV, the mount, like if it's wall-mounted, you can't pull it off. It's actually a fixture, and it technically will come with the home. So it's one of the things that you'll find normally that might be excluded as fixtures. But the stove, the fridge, the washer, dryer, all those items you can actually pick up and move out of the property, they're not considered fixtures. So that's what ends up being in the included items. And you can see some descriptions here of what is typically already included. Sometimes there might be aspects about the property that are furniture or something that fit with the property that the seller may no longer need or is interested in leaving behind for you, or you might actually want. They might not be interested in leaving, but you might want it. You might want to try writing it into the contract to see if maybe as part of the purchase price, you don't factor it in, that they will leave those items for you. And then we have the exclusions. Sometimes there's things that are attached that you just don't want. Sometimes people attach shelving and Murphy beds and things like that, and you don't want them. So that would be another thing that can be negotiated into the contract. Actually, that reminds me of like one of the terms that can go in a contract. Patching and painting, anywhere that sellers have to remove fixtures or paintings. Sometimes that is actually a very valuable term to have in the contract. So when you move in, you don't move in and have all these holes in the wall. It's not always common, but it's a nice thing to ask for depending on the situation. The day that the property is viewed, that is the day that you've seen it, and the property must be substantially in the same condition. So the way it looked that day, the furniture that day, the appliances that day, that's how the property is supposed to be handed over to you on the possession date. And that's why we have that section in the contract. It protects you from the property getting run down or people swapping out appliances or something like that between the time that you remove your subjects and between the time that you take possession. There's a lot of information in here regarding GST, timing, your financing, clearing title, personal information, etc. Again, I encourage you to read it as well as ask me any questions that you have about it. Another section is this restriction of assignment of contract. Contracts are no longer to be assigned without the seller's permission, as well as the profit from any assignment going back to the seller, unless that's negotiated ahead of time. And sometimes this shows up when a buyer is trying to buy the property, but they know that they might need to add someone to the title, to the ownership of the property down the line. Let's say for qualifying for financing, they know that they're not going to be able to do it on their own and they need to put another person as an owner on the property. But for the ease of doing the negotiation and all those kinds of things, that person is not involved, so they're not in this contract. Well, when you add someone to the contract, you're technically assigning it from yourself to you and that other person. So it's considered an assignment of contract. And you'll find that maybe perhaps the first part will be scratched out and you'll get a note, you will be giving a notice telling the seller, hey, we are going to assign this without your consent because we're going to be adding so-and-so's parent to the title or whatever the case may be. The agency disclosure, this is the part of the contract where everybody acknowledges that they have their own agents. So the seller has their agents, you have yours. Sometimes you might have more than one in here, or if there's a team or whatnot. Sometimes I partner up with various realtors and we share clients depending on the situation at hand where it can benefit everybody having more people available to help you. And the last part of the contract is how long the offer is open for. So you will leave a time, you'll make an offer, and we'll give the seller some time to decide whether they want to accept the contract, counter the contract, or reject the contract. And it's nice to have some time if you need to go back and forth. The only downside to leaving time is in the time that your offer is out there waiting to be accepted, somebody else can write an offer. So there's all these different things to consider when you're putting out when you're making your offer and deciding on how much time to leave for the other party to decide. And of course, it's a situation by situation basis, and we'll talk about that. Typically, we like to leave them open for about 24 hours because the last thing you want to do is also write an offer and the seller is just totally unavailable to deal with it and your offer expires. And yeah, so there's, you know, it goes both ways. Your name will go here, you will sign here, and we often use DocuSign. It's a digital signing type of program. It's super easy to use. The offer comes into your phone, to your computer, you just click, 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 and you're signed away. And we can use things like Zoom to go through the offer together prior to making it, so that you have your chance to go through the offer, ask any questions, we can make any changes, and then I send it to you for signing. And then once you sign it and give me permission, I send it off and go and negotiate with the seller on your behalf. So, oh, the last thing in here is you need to declare whether or not you're a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, because if you're not, of course, there are some taxable consequences if you're a foreign buyer, and we need to address those. So I hope you found this helpful. Please email me, call me, text me with any questions that you have in regards to the contract, and then we'll talk about terms. Talk to you soon.